welcome to the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and with me is Douglas County Manager Larry Werner. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Good to have you here, and we're going to talk about the June meetings of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. They met twice during the month of June. First of all, they kicked off the month the right way with a meeting on June 1st. So let's start with that one.
Yeah, June 1st, it was a marathon meeting.
Yeah, it was. It was a very long meeting, but had a lot on the old agenda there.
Yeah.
But we'll start with the commissioners holding a workshop session with NDOT, Nevada Department of Transportation, and they were discussing transportation issues between NDOT and Douglas County. And what kind of things were discussed?
Well, the background for that is the state goes around each one of the counties on an annual basis and looks at updating their capital improvement program, which is what they call STEP, which I think is the State Transportation Enhancement Program. And what they do is look for input from the different counties as to what ought to be priorities for the Nevada Highway Department to do within their jurisdictions. So when we got to ours, the main one, which has been on the list for several years, is the State Route 88 and Centerville intersection because of the safety issues there. And then the second one, it's the highest priority, is the Muller Lane intersection with 395. And that's where it comes in from the west, and a lot of traffic hits Muller Lane and then has to try to cross onto 395, and that gets to be a bit of a problem. There actually were quite a few programs discussed, and I think in this case I would refer the viewers to go to our website, and you can look up the board meetings and check out all the projects that are being proposed by NDOT. It's quite a list, but it's very informative. But I think for Douglas County, those were the two main issues that we saw.
Yeah, the Highway 88 in Centerville, they're proposing a roundabout there, aren't they?
They are, and I think that from what I've seen, and I think what the experts are showing, is that that's probably one of the safest ways to kind of control that type of an intersection.
Slow things down.
It slows it down. You might end up with a few more rear-ender type accidents, people getting used to roundabouts, but the major ones that create the fatalities and stuff simply go away, and it does cause people to slow down.
Yeah, and that's always been the problem there, just too much speed and people pull out and boom, there's a fatality right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really is a tough intersection.
Yeah. Okay, well, any idea yet how long that'll take to get done? Probably a few years.
Well, they told us they would try to get it done in 2018. So
okay.
We'll see how that shakes out. A lot of it obviously will depend on funding and currently what's happened at the national level. A lot of the state highway funds come through the Federal Highway Administration, so we're all kind of anxiously watching the federal budget process.
And of course we want to see them finish the Carson City bypass too.
That looks like it's getting close.
Yeah.
I saw an ad the other day that they're having their walkathon, I think, July 22nd or something like that.
Wow,
and
it's coming right
in
up.
August. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that'll really cut down on time if you have to go to Reno for anything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Well, let's check here. Next item, commissioners approved $2.7 million in funding for the North Valley Wastewater Treatment Facility expansion project, and that money is coming from reserves. And what kind of updates they have planned there?
A little background on that. The original plan was about $7.5 million to do the project, and of that there was going to be $2 million from the Redevelopment Authority and $5.5 million from what we call the State Revolving Fund, which is a no-interest loan kind of program. And several months ago, they had finished the 30% design stage and saw that the scope was increasing significantly, and we were about $2.7 million short. So what this action did is went back to the Redevelopment Authority, and the reserves held in the Redevelopment Authority to pick up the other 2.7.
I see.
That brings us up to a total project of 10.2 million. So the idea is that if we can use those redevelopment monies for infrastructure expansion, that was the purpose of a redevelopment authority.
Okay.
So it shouldn't cost the taxpayers any more, nor the ratepayers. So.
Okay. Very good. So that project is moving ahead.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioners also approved 3 employment contracts, and we'll take those one at a time here. First, there was a 7-year labor agreement with the Douglas County Employees Association, and 7 years. That's something different, isn't it? I don't think it's ever been that long before.
That's one of the longer ones that I've experienced. I think I've done 5 years before. What we've found is that if we do a longer period contract, then we actually get more stability, both from the employee standpoint and then from the county standpoint for budgeting purposes. If we go into negotiations year by year, it gets to be a real problem, because if we have excess revenues, then at that point that could be subject of negotiations, and it gets very, very complicated.
And time consuming.
And time consuming. So we did end up with a 7-year contract on DCEA. Our estimated total cost for that contract over the 7 years is about $3.3 million. And as we projected out this contract with the others, which we'll talk about later, we looked at our revenues from to be able to pay for these through the different funds, being general fund, utility fees, the transit occupancy tax, room tax stuff, and with just the typical projections that we see in growth, which we used about 2.5% a year, then we end up with more revenues than we actually end up seeing an accumulated cost. So this would not require us to go back to the board and to increase anybody's property tax or increase any fees. That with we see as natural growth, we can do that. Now the question comes in, if we don't have that growth, then what happens? And we always have the ability to reduce force, to make changes. And so we've talked to the bargaining units, and they understand that if for some reason we don't see that coming in, then we may have to have a reduction in force to offset some of those costs. So.
And of course, the other one you can use, and it's probably only happened in Douglas County or very few counties, is a reduction of the salaries.
Right, right. That's always there too.
Usually the employees don't go for that.
No, and a lot of times that creates a lot of conflict. I won't basically go back and
Relive all that.
But generally speaking, you're better off to keep your employees that you have, and take a look at reducing some either through attrition. A lot of times there's vacancies and you just don't fill the vacancy. I know in Carson when we did this, we had to reduce about 100 and some employees through a reduction in force. Out of that, we actually laid off 6 people. Other than that, it was all attrition and relooking at the organization, redesigning how we do things, which doesn't hurt. Not too bad.
So a 7-year contract.
Yes.
Yeah, so you won't be at the bargaining table for a while there.
Won't miss that at all.
Yeah, I'll bet. Next, there was a 5-year labor agreement. This one was with the Douglas County Sheriff's Protective Association.
Yes, very similar. They went 5 years instead of the 7, and which we're okay with that. That total over all cost, the increase of the contracts over the 5 years is estimated at $783,000. And again, coupled with all the contracts together, we still meet our revenue projections that I talked about earlier.
Okay. And then the other contract was a 5-year agreement with the Sheriff's Protective Association Sergeants Bargaining Unit.
Yes, and I lost that sheet someplace. I apologize for that.
But is it pretty much along the same lines?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. What I should have said before, the deputies was $2.2 million, and the sergeants was $783,000. So
I see.
Correct that.
Okay. So that those two are long-term too, 5 years.
5 years,
It's quite a
right.
while, yeah. Okay, so that must
Well,
feel good.
Let me interrupt just a second.
Oh, sure,
here.
no, go ahead.
The other thing that's out there that you don't necessarily see here is that we moved through with the non-represented employees to try to give them the same type of thing. So the board adopted that. So actually we have 3 labor contracts and 1 non-union representative contract. That cost was about $4.5 million. Again, all these were aggregated to look at our revenues. So.
Okay, very good. Also at that meeting, commissioners approved the updated Douglas County Strategic Plan. Now we've talked about this one quite a bit over the last few months. And is this the final strategic plan now?
It is for this year.
Set in cement?
Yeah, exactly. It was basically a revisit of the previously adopted strategic plan, and we will do this every year, mainly to look and see if there are any of our major goals that the Board of Commissioners and the community wants to accomplish. What we then do is take a look at what's been adopted as the strategic plan, and then we formulate our department operational plans to try to make sure we work toward those goals. Again, the values that the board reaffirmed are the integrity of the actions, accountability, customer service, leadership, communication, teamwork, and then the overall was organizational stability, safe community, financial stability, infrastructure, natural resources, and economic vitality. So all of that we try to work together to make things happen.
Okay, very good. And another item from the June 1st agenda was commissioners approving the purchase of a little over 1 acre parcel located on Carter Drive in the Topaz Ranch Estates area for $26,500. And what are they going to use that property for?
That'll actually be used for overflow parking for the community center.
Okay.
There had been a church that was on that property, and the church relocated and put the property up for sale, but the members of the church felt that that should be some way associated with the community center because of the interaction and involvement there. So they agreed to really reduce the price significantly to allow the county to purchase that, and it was about a 50% reduction in what they were asking.
Very good.
And we felt that was good for everybody in that one.
So that'll be increased parking for the community center.
Yes, actually, it will preserve the parking that we've been borrowing from the church in the first place. So.
Okay. Yeah. Now it's all nice and legal.
Exactly.
Commissioners heard a presentation on the upcoming air show at Minden Tahoe Airport. Thunderbirds will be roaring back into town.
Absolutely, and that's really exciting. That'll be October 6th and 7th, or I'm sorry, 7th and 8th. And we certainly encourage people to go onto the Minden Tahoe Airport website, take a look at the events that are there. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, or like in my case, sit in your backyard and watch them go over.
Well, exactly.
Those guys were all over the place.
Yes,
it was pretty phenomenal. So we're going to do that all over again, and it looks like they have quite a big show with that plan too.
Yes, and I run through Bobby Thompson's, who's the airport manager, through her presentation. There were probably a dozen or different activities, events that were occurring. All of them look really interesting. So I think this year I'm going to go sit in a chair and watch it at the site. So.
Sounds like a good plan. Okay, one more. I just had to ask you this one. Commissioners heard a presentation on the Agri Hoods Economic Vitality Project. What's that all about?
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a concept that's kind of gathering around the country where you can take fairly maybe ag lands and areas that were getting residential development, and you try to mesh the two together where actually you create housing units, but then internally or a part of that project you also preserve ag lands for like a truck farm or a community garden kind of thing. In many cases I've seen where they actually create that like a farmer's market within there, so the revenues that are generated from the produce that's raised there kind of goes back to support the agri farm. So it's a concept of kind of preserving open space, getting some homegrown foods, and having residential development. So it's a pretty interesting concept.
So it's a derivation of neighborhood, agri-hood.
It is. And in fact, it's kind of what the Corley Ranch did to some extent.
Yeah. With the pumpkins and...
Yeah, the idea of preserving actual farmable lands that you still could have residential development around.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, that pretty much covers the June 1st meeting. Then we move on to the June 15th meeting of the Commission. And at that meeting, Commissioners approved, with some changes, an interlocal agreement to provide water service to Douglas County, Carson City, Town of Minden, and the Indian Hills General Improvement District. And this will replace all the other agreements that are out there.
A couple of things happened here. One of them was that each one of us had separate agreements. For example, Douglas County had an agreement with the Town of Minden to take water, and then and to transport Carson City's water. So therefore we had an agreement between Minden and Douglas, Douglas and Carson, and then there were independent agreements between Douglas and Minden and Indian Hills, and it really got to be a complex, confusing mess. So we agreed that all needed to be one master agreement so we could kind of make sure we pick up all the pieces and do it right. And then there was a little bit of a heated discussion over what part of the infrastructure within the Town of Minden did the wholesale parties need to pay for, and that got to be pretty contentious. And we agreed that we'd take out, and it all revolved around a storage tank of about 2.3 million, something of that nature. And we agreed to take that out of the wholesale rates, but then in turn we would help pay for that, but through the purchase of water rights from the Town of Minden, which ultimately we end up with an asset for that payment that we really could assign to the wholesale water agreement. And that allowed then the rates to come down a little bit from the Town of Minden, which then passed on the savings to the other groups. So it was about a year-long negotiation, but that should set things in place now for quite some time.
Well, this whole project hasn't been going on that long, and it's a little wonder that they didn't find maybe some things that needed to be tightened up in the contract. Like you say, having all those contracts was kind of confusing.
It was, Lloyd, and then each entity was responsible for a proportion of its own construction, and that got to be confusing too. So when you think about this on paper, it was complicated, and then the actual implementation of it got even worse. But now that it's in the ground and operating, we could see where the kind of the high points and low points were and be able to kind of resolve those.
That's good. Commissioners also at that June 15th meeting approved the first memorandum of understanding for the newly approved labor agreement we talked about earlier with the Douglas County Employees Association, and also approved a classification plan to clarify merit salary increases.
Right, and the memorandum of understanding, there was some confusion about one section of the employee contracts that talked about in odd years of the contract there would be a flat 2% cost of living adjustment. On the even years, it's whatever the cost of living that the county actually sees not to exceed 2%. And so the way the language was written, there was some confusion on certain members of the commissioner, and I felt that it would be better to maybe clarify that through a memorandum of understanding. So that's what we did.
Okay.
And then the second part was to reduce the merit pay, which currently under the county policy was from a 0 to 6% merit increase to a 0 to 3%, so we could reduce the potential cost impacts of that.
All right. Commissioners also approved a nuisance abatement and costs associated with that for 2 homes in the Topaz area. What's left of them, because we talked about those properties and you said they were pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
So they're going to be cleaned up, and county's going to pay for that?
Well, that's the way this works, is that we did clean those off. The lots are now...
Oh, they've been cleaned off?
They've been cleaned
Okay.
off. We hired a contractor to go in and do that. Then what we do is take that bill and we, through this process, apply it as a lien against the property.
Oh, okay.
So ultimately, the property owners themselves, through any future sales, will end up paying the county back for that.
Okay, very good. And the neighbors have to be a lot happier.
Much happier.
Very
exactly.
good. Also, commissioners heard a presentation from Mary and Steve Walker, the lobbyists for Douglas County at the legislature, on they gave kind of a wrap-up report on the 2017 legislative session. How did Douglas County make out in the session?
I think we did okay. Sometimes it's hard to tell. But, you know, the main issues that we saw at the county level were resolving the Douglas County Sewer Improvement District #1 issue about how it was formed and created, and get that resolved. And that was resolved by the legislature by creating a sanitary sewer authority at the Lake Tahoe, because it really didn't fit into any of the existing statutes, and was our issue all along. So that got resolved, and I think that's to the benefit of all of us. The second one was a bill to maybe talk about going in and looking at GIDs, and are they, the general improvement districts, I shouldn't use acronyms, are they doing what they were originally created to do, and if not, is there issues there we need to talk about? So it kind of created a review process to kind of look at those if it's necessary. And right at this point, we're not planning at the county level of doing a wholesale review of the general improvement districts, because that's just...
Well, we've got quite a few of them.
Ultimately, I think altogether with special districts and towns, we have 27 of them in Douglas County. But so it was kind of that. And then the only other bill that really impacted us was Senator Settlemyre had introduced a bill to allow windmills on agricultural ground, and we were a little concerned about how wide open that was. So we worked on that one to try to have some constraints on it and the ability to kind of make sure it matches the aesthetics of the area, that sort of thing. And that got passed. And other than that, we kind of just really wanted to play the defensive mode and I guess try to discourage bills that would cost the community a lot, and we weren't sure the benefit. So we spent a lot of time playing that role. There were bills that related to insurance, medical insurance for counties that would require kinds of things like insurance companies to not create a differential between in-network and out-of-network. And that sounded really good on the surface, but what would happen is our insurance premiums would have gone up probably more than what it would cost us if we're out-of-network. Yeah. So those kinds of things we spent quite a bit of time on, saying that, hey, you know, this really hasn't been thought through, and we really would like to not see this happen. So.
Well, it sounds like we survived the legislative session pretty well.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Very good. I was wondering, we've kind of touched on everything of significance at the two meetings of June 1st and the 15th. Do you have a preview of anything coming up before the Board of Commissioners in July or the future?
We haven't seen that yet, Lloyd, mainly because we have this extra week in that.
Yes.
So I haven't seen any stuff that's rolling in on the July 1st or July 6th meeting. There's been some discussions about some pretty routine things, but at this stage I don't have anything specific.
Okay, very good. Well, Larry, I want to thank you for being here and sharing all this information. That's what we do here on the County Manager's Report. Our County Manager, Larry Werner. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and we'll see you next time on the County Manager's Report.